Welcome back to another episode of Be Our Guest here on Musical Theater Radio. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Jovanoff. We are heading once again back to my virtual second home, New York City, to talk to our next guest. He's written shows about the great Greek gods, the often misunderstood creatures we call monsters, and a woman's journey to escape an oceanic cult. Epic subjects for an epic guest. Let's welcome to the show, Rob Rokicki. Hello, Rob. How you doing?
Hi, great. Thank you for having me.
No problem. I always start my interview the same way. We want to know who Rob is, like deep, dark secrets of Rob. So who is Rob in 30 seconds? The 30-second bio of Rob.
I'm just a goofy guy that is a storyteller, and that's about all you need to know.
Short, sweet, to the point. I like it. That'll work. So, Rob, have you always been into musical theater, or is that something you discovered a little bit later in life?
Oh, no, it's always been there. I was 5 years old, neighbor, very talented kid named Mark Harif. He was in a production, and I thought, oh, I want to do that. That looks cool. He looks cool. He looks like he has friends doing that. I want to do that. I was, hopelessly. This is first grade. I don't know what I was doing, but I was like, that sounds fun. Because I love music, and my parents were into musicals, or at least my mother and my grandmother was. So, I think that was my first speaking part in a show. Going Buggy, played the lawyer. Yeah, I think it was no, and then I said no. I mean, that was what it was, because we were voting for the Bugs wanted equal rights, and so I was like the lawyer against them, and then I finally had my mind changed at the end. So I had like one line, but it was a very important line. So that was that, and then from then on I was like, okay, that's a thing. I like doing this. And then there are like little benchmarks along the way. When I was in like a sophomore in high school, I had a friend that adapted like his own zany weird version of, I think it's William Inge's play Bus Stop, and he did his own musical version of that called Bus Stop Polka, which was just silly and stupid, and used all of his friends and had a little musical number in it. And I thought, oh wait, you can do that. Yeah. And so I immediately was like, oh, I want to write my own weird thing and have my friends and all kinds of people. And I would just write for as many people as I could to just have a gang of weirdos making stuff. So I wrote a show. I sent it to my dad, and he was like, this is insane. This is Mass Confusion. I said, that's it. That's my title. So Mass Confusion was my first play. Had a musical number in it. And then I started writing plays, like silly sci-fi, scary things too. I was always interested in genre, always in an early age. I mean, I have a twin sister. We were both born on Halloween. So you can imagine lots of spooky things in my house. And also you can imagine birthday parties with 30 kids all on sugar highs, just running around the neighborhood from Halloween candy. But, so then in high school, I was starting to take it more seriously. I entered a play festival and was lucky enough to have one of my plays performed, selected to be performed at the Denver Center of Performing Arts, because I'm from Denver. So to hear professional actors read your stuff out loud was the next tier of oh, I can do that. And that really set off a lot of little idea light bulbs. And then my parents were lucky enough I was lucky enough to have my parents help me get into, or pay for, because it ain't cheap. There's a place called Interlochen, which is a camp in the north part of Michigan. It's right near Traverse City. My dad had gone there as a pianist when he was a kid, because he grew up in Michigan. My dad wanted to be a concert pianist, but he ended up being a orthopedic surgeon. So he's a very analytical, smart guy. I grew up only listening to classical music. My parents would take me to music festivals and Aspen and stuff like that. I was very lucky. I had no idea how lucky I was. But then of course I ended up writing almost exclusively rock musicals. So what are you going to do? But yeah, that experience at Interlochen was really kind of transformative, because I saw, this is kids from all over the world come there, and they're at the kind of very tip top of their talents. And I thought, they can do this professionally. And so that most of my friends in high school were going into being lawyers or engineers, and I wanted to write and be in musicals. I was still writing even when I was an actor. I originally gone to, I auditioned actually for the University of Michigan while I was at Interlochen, not knowing that that was a good musical theater school. It's one of the best musical theater departments. And it's wild when I was there. There's so many writers that come out of that department. Benjamin Justin, or Pasek and Paul, oh my God, Nick Blameyer, and then Andrew Lippa was an actor there and did shows. Jeff Marks, who wrote, Avenue Q. Like there's so many writers that have come out of there, and I think it's because the head of the department really like instilled this love of craft, and that you just wanted to know more and explore that, and kind of get your hands in the mud and make things. And they had a really strong student produced shows there. So I wrote my first big musical that we got to perform at school, and I had all these resources to me that I had never had before. It was really dark and really bad. It was a dark version of the Oresteia, like the Aeschylus's Greek play set as like this gritty cop drama with just like bad cops and prostitutes. And it was all. My girlfriend played a prostitute and her parents came to see it. It was just, I was like, oh God, everybody's gonna hate this. It was really fun. And it was me just starting to figure out kind of what my voice was as a writer, or what things interested me. And I think like noir and genre and scary things, horror, those elements have always kind of trickled their way through all the stuff that I write about. Outsiders, all that kind of stuff.
Have you ever thought about going back to that show, cleaning it up a little and
Trespasses? Hell no. I was dusting off all that because we just moved. I have all these old shows I've worked on over the years, and some of them are like, oh, that was a pretty good show, and others I was like, oh, that one needs to die a dishonorable death. I will say this though, I was doing a show at Music Theater Wichita, is how I got my equity card as an actor, and we were doing a production of Rags. It was like a new iteration of Rags, and Stephen Schwartz came down to like work on it, and that was really exciting. And I got to meet him, but he saw me in the corner. I happened to be reading Wicked at the time, just because that was the book everyone was reading. He's like, I'm making that into a musical. I was like, sure you are. There's like some crazy sex stuff in the opening, and I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah. I was like, well, that's awesome. And I had liked his work, but that took me, oh, he's writing about this dark, messed up stuff. That's stuff I like to write about. And he said, I hear that you're the writer in the company, and I gave him my demo of Trespass. He listened to it. It was very kind to that. He's always been someone who has shepherded other writers, and I just think it all came full circle when he actually came to see The Lightning Thief. So I get to thank him personally. I'm like, you're not going to remember this terrible musical called Trespass. But yeah, it's funny how all that comes together. But yeah, always been writing and performing and music directing, and I think my hats that I wear have, instead of just getting fewer, have only gotten more. I get excited about something and I want to learn about it. So like all over quarantine, I learned how to play drums. I want to be a better drummer so I can be a better composer, a better orchestrator. I got into orchestrating the last couple of years. So like that's newer to me. I played in rock bands. I've done a lot of random stuff that I think has fueled my kind of intake that helps then my creative output, so that I have more things to draw from.
Hey, you know what? That totally makes sense. And I say that to people all the time. Like the more experiences and skills you have, the better you are overall. There's always those, actors who concentrate on one thing, right? I want to be a good actor, but you know what? Pay attention to the orchestra or the lights or football or something else.
Well, you gotta have life experiences to draw from, and you have to, theater is so collaborative. It's never made in a vacuum. You have to work with others, and that's kind of part of been my MO after Lightning Thief, was trying to work with people who don't look like me, who don't have my worldview or my experience or my age or whatever. And try to collaborate with them on projects, and that has always been more fruitful because it makes me think, it expands my view, it expands my range, and then it brings other things out of me, song ideas, things I would have never thought of beforehand.
Yeah.
which is exciting.
I agree. Getting new experiences, unless it's my kids talking about what they watch on YouTube, I will ignore that on purpose because what they say, I'm just like, no, stop. So I will expand my mind only so far. I'll be honest. So you went to Michigan after you graduated. Did you go back to Colorado or did you go straight to New York?
I got an old car a friend like let me have because it was falling apart, and then I drove from Michigan with all my stuff to New York. I moved to New York August of 2001, towards the end of August, so I could make it to see a Radiohead concert. That was very important to me. And then wildly enough, my first day job, because I was like, oh, I need money, was working for like a it's called like Related Management or something. It's like a real estate company where like people, they have like certain partitions for low income housing, and then they have like, it's like luxury condos and stuff like that. But I was going to work in their leasing office. I don't know what I was doing. I don't know. It was a day job. It was like, but it was on September 11th was my first day job, right across from Tower One. So I'm glad my job didn't start until 9. Wow. But yeah, that was a wild day watching all of that happen from my roof. Yeah. So needless to say, my journey to New York was a little strange, but then the time after that was so. It was a really interesting and incredible time to be in the city because people really came together, and it kind of, a lot of folks left, but for a lot of us, I think for artists in particular, you saw the need for community and for storytelling and for a way of pushing through trauma and catharsis, and that solidified my desire to stay in New York for sure. I was like, oh, this is it. This is my place.
Yeah. So you're in New York now. You were you getting jobs as an actor? Were you writing at that point? What were you doing?
Well, I was the big cheese at Michigan, so I thought, oh, I'll just get an agent. I'll just get jobs. No, it was hard. I couldn't get an agent. It was kind of a big rude awakening, as we all had. You know, this was before, you know, really phones and YouTube and all that stuff. So you wait online and 6 a.m. and on the street. Usually it was cold, and you were like, friends would go get coffee for you, and you wait for the Equity building to open just so you could maybe get seen. I paid my dues a bit that way, but you know, also I was lucky. I did get some jobs, and then I got a break on a cruise ship gig that took me all over the world, which was a really incredible experience. So that was like 7 months in that. And when I got back, I got to do a couple national tours as an actor, and that was really, really exciting. And then a lot of regional gigs, a lot of stuff in New York, and I was always writing the whole time. And when I was on tour, I was writing. I actually got to tour up in Toronto.
Which show were you in Toronto?
That was Evita, or no, that was Miss Saigon that I was in Toronto for. I got to go Evita. We were in Windsor, I want to say, or Kitchener. Kitchener, is that?
You were in Kitchener. What year was that? Because I was probably in Kitchener.
2006, 2005, 2006.
Yeah, I was probably in Kitchener at that point.
It was cold, but it was real pretty. It's a sleepy little town. I liked it.
It is. Yeah.
Tour is great. I really loved being on tour.
That's fun.
Yeah, so I got a lot of traveling out of it, and that like opened my eyes a bit more to experiences and things, and that informed my writing. And then, you know, I was trying to write. I had opportunities, and then, like, you know, just the business is arbitrary and random and difficult, and a lot of projects that were slated to happen, and then producers would pull out, or at the last second somebody has a emergency in their family, and all of a sudden your backing investor is gone, and 3 years of your life is gone. And so a lot of projects fell apart. And I had a writing partner named Mike Ruby, who's wonderful, that we worked on a bunch of shows with and got some traction on a couple projects. One I really, really love called Strange Tales. That was a triptych about weird but true animal stories of animal heroism, that we did at Ars Nova. So like I had a lot of like near hits with the things. And then I booked my first Broadway show in 2012. and it was going to change my life. I was understudying 2 leads. I learned accordion for 6 months, and then the day before we started rehearsals, we found out on Playbill that it had been postponed indefinitely, so it was canceled. So that was where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. And I'm so glad that I had a community of friends to fall back on, and they kind of helped push me to say, no, keep going. So I finished an album I'd been working on. I started Monster Songs on my own because I could take agency of projects that I could work on, and then I did a concert, and friends were grateful enough to, or I was grateful enough to have them come out and perform for me. And then and then this show fell in my lap called The Lightning Thief. My buddy Joe Iconis, who I music directed for, had said, hey, they're looking for a guy that writes rock for this piece, and I'm starting to work on this other piece with this guy named Joe Tracz on this piece called Be More Chill. You should meet Joe. And I met Joe, and there were a bunch of folks that submitted demos, and for whatever reason I had the best fit for the project, and then I ended up booking that, and then that little children's show ended up having a life of its own and took over the next 10 years of my life, and now here we are.
So you were approached about the show rather than, because I talk to a lot of creators who have to approach the writer to get the rights to the book, where I guess they already had that, or...
Well, I had written a lot of original musicals, which, let me tell you, writing original musicals is real hard to get produced, because this is about what? It's a comic book about monsters? I'm like, but it's like, it's a musical, and it's a concept album, and there's animation, and they're like, okay, what? But when you have an IP like Lightning Thief, which is one of the most popular young adult novels in the world, it's quite a coup to get those rights. So Theatreworks, wonderful company in New York, the artistic director Barbara Pasternak fought for years and years and years to get those rights, mostly because Rick Riordan, was the author, was very badly burned by the movies. The movies were not well received by him or by the fans, and they were not good stewards to the property, let's just put it that way. So he's very reluctant to let anyone else touch his baby. But Theatreworks had a great track record of adapting books for 27 years or something at that point. So, Barbara wore them down, and thank God she did. And we got his agents, Nancy and Marietta, at the Galt Zachar agency. They're amazing. And they were at every workshop, every rehearsal, telling us what we could and couldn't kind of change or alter and we respected that. We wanted to honor the source material, and that every little step of the way got us closer to getting more traction with the piece. At first it was just going to be like, oh, maybe we'll do like a little mini tour of it, which is what Theatreworks used to do to make most of their money, was touring. And then they were like, well, we'll never have a New York production because, the rights are held up with the film studios that had that. But after they saw our workshops, they were like, wow, this is something. We're going to try to get those rights from you. And the second movie had kind of bombed. So then we got the rights. So we were able to do a sit-down production in New York, and it just so happened to be part of what Theatreworks does as a free summer theater. So our show was free to young people, and a lot of folks, it was their first musical, and that was really an honor. And that 1 hour musical did really well. Got a lot of attention. We got a Lortel nomination against shows like Hamilton, which was insane for a children's show to get that kind of recognition. So it perked up producers' ears, and people said, well, what if you expanded it? So we did kind of the inverse of what you normally do, because I work in licensing for adaptation of Broadway shows into junior versions. So it was kind of the inverse of that, where you take a Broadway show and you make it a 1 hour version. We had a 1 hour version. We're now going to expand it to a full 2-act, not just for kids, but for everybody, family show. And we did that over the course of a couple of years. And then that gained traction and did well. And then cast recording took on a life of its own, and then build. But it was always like, how are we serving the story and this iteration of it, and all of that. That's how kind of it all snowballed.
Nice. Well, congratulations on the show and
Thank you.
And how it went. What was that moment like when that first, not the previews, but that first performance when you were in the theater and you got to see it on Broadway. Now, two-part question, that, how did it feel? And B, I always picture it that the writers are standing at the back. That's always how the movies are. The writers are standing at the back watching it. Or did you actually have a seat somewhere?
I had a seat. Seat. It was surreal. It was great, but honestly, watching it off Broadway was much more rewarding. Just the sense of community and how beloved we were off Broadway, and then when we took it on tour, we got to perform in some of the largest theaters in the country, which was incredible. And then we took it back to New York at the Beacon Theater, a place where like I had seen Brandi Carlile and Chris Cornell played, and like Prince played there. Everyone had played there, Bowie, and we did like a sellout, like long weekend, extended weekend there. It's like a 3,400 seat, like it's huge, and that was like being a rock star, and like Broadway shows don't do that. And that thing, and I mean the fact that the show had played Town Hall and the Beacon and the Lortel and then moved to the Longacre, it's wild, and all these iterations that we got to do in all these different places. So Broadway was kind of like a last stop on a tour, and it was a mixed feeling. I had bartended at that theater, so it was a real like to when I was hustling for money, and so it came kind of full circle to see that happen. And I didn't believe it was going to happen, honestly, because things have fallen apart in so many of the projects I've worked on over the years, but that's just like the business, you don't really believe it until you see it. I've been very fortunate. So I was thinking, well, we got through Act 1, so I hope Act 2 happens. But I also, I knew what Broadway was, and I know the kind of commercial beast it was. And I know that that our particular show was not for, we knew that it would not be received by the Broadway community the way that we had been received off Broadway or regional theaters or at the Beacon, just because our show is for young people, and the crowds loved it. But we knew that even critics that praised and loved us off Broadway would suddenly treat us differently, because I had seen that happen with my friend Joe with Be More Chill, and other projects like that. It was kind of a double-edged sword, quite honestly, the Broadway moment. I was like, wow, what an accomplishment. And now the show will hopefully have a bigger licensing life, which means kids get to do it all over the world. And I really think that like that is the thing that the educator in me, and seeing it when it was at the Lortel and part of Free Theater, I want to young people have always taken ownership of that piece. So exciting to say, oh wow, this Broadway thing, whatever how we quantify and qualify whatever something good is by the stamp of, oh, well, now you're a Broadway composer, that somehow makes you better than when you weren't. But people do. That's how they associate it. And well, I said, if that's what it takes so that more people get to tell the story and be a part of this story that has helped a lot of kids, especially kids that feel different, kids with ADD and dyslexia, kids that don't feel like they have a sense of community, or kids with absentee parents, like that to me was the thrilling, exciting part, not just the like self-aggrandizing, wow, look at what this thing I've accomplished. I mean, it was really exciting for my parents to see it, because like a lot of relatives, they don't have a frame of reference. If you say, oh, well, my son's a Broadway composer, then they have a frame of reference for that, right? Instead of my son writes weird musicals about monsters, and you know what I mean? So like for that, it was great. We had a great opening night party. We had a great run. Like the audiences loved it. We had people of all ages there, and that was to see just the breadth and scope of people from all walks of life. Seeing that was really thrilling too. So yeah, that it was a really weird, so I think like it's a hard thing to say, because it's all wrapped up in kind of like, I knew what we were getting into, I knew what this would be. It was still really incredibly emotional and cathartic, and like, wow, I think the thing that put it in perspective was like, I had lost my Broadway job as a performer. I thought I was going to quit the industry, and then I decided to just keep writing and do something productive, and that ended up being the very thing that got me back to Broadway. So I think that was really wonderful, if you just like thinking about it in those kinds of terms.
Oh, I love your answer. That's a, you know what, that's a fantastic answer for what was it like to have it on Broadway? Because I talk with a lot of writers and producers who've gone from off Broadway to Broadway, and it's a completely different beast, and they feel the same way as you. And I also talk to a lot of new writers who always think Broadway is the be all and end all, whereas your
Yeah,
show might not be perfect for Broadway.
it
Getting it
might
on
not be.
Broadway is fantastic, but you know, like you said, it might work a little bit better off Broadway, or now that the licensing, it can go out to smaller theaters.
Yeah, it's perceptive. I mean,
Yeah.
it's perception 100%. The difference between off Broadway and Broadway is one seat. It's 500 seats,
Yeah.
499 versus 500 seats. That's it. But like, it's a leap in the mind of kind of this elitist kind of gatekeepers that hold what Broadway is, and that's changed a bit after the pandemic. I have to say,
Yes,
we were
agreed.
there's been a sea change. People are now talking about things that they would have never talked about before, like streaming and accessibility and inclusion in every department down, because this is an industry wide kind of problem of
Yeah.
I mean, the just kind of all of our institutional systemic racism and problems of inequality that have trickled down in our industry. It's commercial theater, it's capitalism, so how do we wrestle with what the nature of the thing is? And this art form that we love, but also how problematic it is. So I think it's been really interesting to see what's happened out of the pandemic. I've been in marches, we've been in things, like to help make the industry better, for everyone, for people backstage and on stage and all of that. And that continues with safety and COVID and all that stuff. It's decisions we're constantly having now, but it's really interesting where I'm love this idea that actors don't have to feel. I think that was part of my whole life too, of when you're an actor, you're so indebted to someone to say like, oh, thank you so much, thank you, I'll do anything, you know what I mean? You're just so lucky to have a job because there's so few people working. And then, but standing up for yourself and oh, this is not okay, or this is not the way I think should be, or you know what I mean? And more people are doing that. And it gives me more hope for the industry in general. But I'm an advocate for accessibility. That's kind of my thing. I love to get on my little soapbox about, because it shouldn't cost over $150 to see an off-Broadway show. That was what I was trying to see yesterday, was an off-Broadway show. It was $150. I was like, what?
Oh, jeez.
But that's the business model we have. So
Yeah.
unless we find other ways of adapting things like streaming, which are not mutually exclusive to the success of a show. I mean, Lin-Manuel, he was talking about how people saw Hamilton, they were like, oh my God, now I want to experience that for real. I want to see it live. And I think especially with small independent shows that can't find an audience, and they have to go through all these gatekeepers and hoops and levels and people signing off on things. And some people are really smart artistic directors, people of theaters. They're really talented and they understand the projects. Other people are just people with money, and they're the ones that are just like, you're like, but you have to like, I guess I have to listen to their opinion, so that you can get the thing made. It's such an archaic, weird art form. I love it so fiercely, but it's just like, oh man, I see why people go to film and TV more.
Like, this pandemic has been awful. We only know that, but it has opened up eyes and doors of opportunity and ways of thinking. We've taken a step back because of the pandemic, but I think with the streaming and all of us having to learn audio and video editing, we've taken 2 steps forward, and things we're going to continue to use once the pandemic slows down or becomes endemic, or whatever.
I mean, I know as sick as we all are of Zoom, I think it's been really helpful, especially helpful for folks with families. And there is work you can do, and there's prep work you can do with technology. There's no replacing people in a room, but I think having all these other supplemental ways of helping create I was able to collaborate with folks in Japan and friends in London and create and work on projects I wouldn't have otherwise had time or thought to do.
And like I said at the beginning, New York City's become my virtual second home. I'm there all the time talking to people. London's become my third. That's worse because of the time zone. I would much rather talk to you in New York because that's easier. But yeah, it's opened up global opportunities, and I love the streaming idea because I think some of the old school producers think, oh, if we stream it, we're giving it away and people won't come to the theater for live. But you know what? Bootlegs have been around for how long?
They've been around
Still
forever.
go to the theater. Right?
Yeah. No, there's no substitute for it. But I mean, like, and there's other ways we're looking at it too. I mean, like my piece Monster Songs, we're looking at it as an immersive piece, but we've also looked at it as a virtual reality game kind of piece. So it's like it's experiential in just a different way. But I love having the audience feel a little caught off guard. It's kind of also with the musical I'm writing about, the Cult Experience Brianna's, where it's like I want the audience to lean in. I want them to feel implicated in the action. I love having that kind of group think, tribalism, all of that stuff that I'm exploring thematically, like happen in real time with these folks. So there's no substitution for that, but you can still play with those ideas with audio, with immersive technology, with AR, with VR and stuff like that. And I think people are scared of it because they think they're tools that are like, they're just tools. They're just storytelling tools. If you employ them in cool, creative ways, they could be theatrical. They can help you experience stepping into another character's shoes, and that's ultimately what I'm interested in, whether that's creating a cast album or an audio book or whatever it is. It's empathy and how do we explore storytelling. That's all I care about in whatever format that takes.
I'd love to learn more about Monster Song, the graphic novel musical. Tell us a little bit about that. And you mentioned the virtual reality aspect of it.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I was born on Halloween. Always been a fan of monsters. And I had this idea of writing kind of a like a song cycle from monsters' points of view, but I wanted to play around with kind of archetypes of song genre and of like the monsters themselves, and like kind of look at the history of that monster and the psychology behind that monster, a little bit like the uses of enchantment, that happened with Into the Woods. Sondheim used a lot of uses of enchantment, the kind of like psychological versions of like these fairy tales and stories. So I did a lot of research on monsters, and I'm like, well, all right, well, what if I looked at, say, the Troll Under the Bridge? And one of my favorite books growing up was the Billy Goat's Gruff. So I was like, all right, what are people like troll like? And he's ostracized, he's away from society, or this creature, and I just thought there was this homeless man that lived down the street from me, and is kind of young, and you would just see him year after year, and you try to help them, and they end up at the same place, and they would snap or lash out, but also, moments of tenderness. And you were just like, that I saw him under an underpass. And I was like, well, that could be the troll under the bridge. That could be, I started seeing how like love, twisted, denied, exploit, whatever could create these different kind of things that we call monsters, but you know what I mean? But like showing their human counterpart by the end of the show. That's the kind of idea behind it. So, that was one kind of spark, but then it was like, okay, what would a troll sound like? What would it sing like? And I started thinking about like kind of, if he had a banjo, what would that be like? And I started playing around with kind of bluesy New Orleans kind of stuff. And that was really fun. And then I started looking at like, what would a young vampire and a zombie, like if I was thinking about love and consuming love in a relationship. So I thought, oh, teenagers and their hormones are going crazy. What if it's this vampire and a zombie that are eating this guy, blood and brains, and it's done as kind of a Amy Winehouse girl group 60s kind of feel. So like, each song had like their own style. And then I needed a collaborator, though. I still needed somebody to collaborate with. And so I reached out to my friend Dave O'Neill, and I said, would you like to to draw one of these, maybe do like an animatic or a movie for it? And he's like, sure. So we did one. The idea was to write with different artists for each song, but he was like, no, let me try a different one. And it was so incredible. His artwork was so amazing. I was like, oh, this is the guy, this is the person I'm going to collaborate with. So we collaborated in a very different way. We talked about what the visual world of the monster was, the sonic world of the monster, the themes that we wanted to address. Medusa is this Gorgon, she's either vilified or misunderstood, and whether she was a product of sexual assault or what, it's just like I feel like we don't know Medusa's story. So I was like, what if we hear it from her point of view? What if she kind of takes back the narrative a bit? And what if we did that as like an Adele song? You know what I mean? Like a big showstopper. So it was fun to play around with all these kinds of monster archetypes, but there needed to be more of a through line. And so we was selected for the National Alliance for Musical Theater, and that's where I met Jen Thompson, who's an incredible director, and she helped me kind of flesh out this idea I had about this kid on the cusp of adolescence who is processing his world by seeing these people in his life as these monsters. And that's kind of how he is kind of figuring out his place in the world. And it's the cusp of adolescence. So it's again, like I write about things that scare me. I'm worried about what young men are turning into, especially in the United States and all over the world. We get radicalized, we other people, all those kinds of things. So I thought, oh, this is really interesting. This is this like monster therapy session that he has in his head as a way of like exploring the world and kind of coming to terms with himself. And we just did another workshop of it at a place in Connecticut called Theatreworks Hartford, because I guess I only work at places called Theatreworks. And that took it to a whole new level. And it was devoid of Dave's artwork, which was wild because I'd always used Dave's artwork for all of the kind of concerts we've done, which always played in the background. But it was fun to see the songs stand on their own as well. But Dave's artwork will live on in a different way because this woman, Denise Koh, in Germany fell in love with the piece and has been developing a virtual reality video game using Dave's artwork and the song. So it's a whole nother way of experiencing, feeling like because that's the idea we want in the immersive world of the theater play as well, is to feel like any one of us could be a monster. Any one of us could get up and testify, could be a part of this kid's imagination. And so it's really fun to then take it to a virtual place where you actually, your hands become the monster hands and you're in the world of that monster. It's really cool. She just won a grant for it because the German government loves to give money to artists, which is great. I don't know about other places that do that. So I could talk about monster songs all day. It's just, I love every time we do it with a different cast of different ages and different gender identities that perform different monsters and different things. And it always becomes richer and more interesting every time we do it. And I'm like, oh, wow, there is more to be gleaned every time we do the piece. And I wrote a new song for it, which I'm really excited about, which I'm going to start recording. And I had a killer singer for it. I can't wait.
That's fantastic.
These things take time.
The show sounds very cool and very interesting. And the fact that, you've got the aspect, just as a theater piece, it sounds cool and interesting. And then you add the graphic novel element and then you add the virtual reality element. Like you like your own, for lack of a better term, Marvel universe, right? You've got little pieces that are added onto it. You've got your own little universe right there.
It is really exciting also to collaborate with so many musicians. I mean, just making the album, I think there are 30 different players and we have like 5 different drummers on it. I was just like, I asked folks that I would never think that would say yes to a project like this. And I just was super lucky. I have Cheryl Freeman, the original Acid Queen on Tommy on Broadway. She's singing as the mad scientist woman. There's a lot of camp and fun to the show too. It's not just like a psychological examination of a kid in puberty. It's like there's a lot of like really fun rock stuff on there. I think it sounds killer. It took a long time. It took about 6 years to produce it.
That's awesome. So Rob, do you have anything else going on that obviously you're busy with Monster Songs, but do you have anything else going on that you could talk about?
Yeah, well, I mean, we just came back. My writing partner Sarah Beth Pfeiffer and I just came back from the UK. We did a big workshop production at a college in near Wales of Experience Marianas, and it went great. We had a killer director, Grace Taylor. She's the associate on 6. She did an amazing job with those students. It was performed at this big convention hall, which is the perfect place to have like a multi-level marketing cult meeting on the ocean, because it was right on the ocean. It was incredible. It's where like Banksy did his like Disney, it like riff on Disney. I can't remember what it was called. But it was like Dismal Land, I think it was called. But it's like right on the ocean. It was like spooky at night, storms crashing all around us. I was like, oh, this is the place to have a. It's very much like Heaven's Gate and NXIVM and Scientology. Like it takes place on a boat, like, and the audience gets kind of indoctrinated in real time. That's like the fun of it. So that was super fun. We learned a ton from it. We released an EP earlier this year of it, and I'm gonna continue to record songs for it with the hope of doing a production. But that's a show that doesn't. We were talking about being on Broadway or not Broadway. It's a show that never should kind of really go to Broadway. Yeah. It always wants to be in a some kind of non-traditional theater space, so that the audience can be immersed in the wildness and be as much a part of it as they want to be. So that was really fun. We just got back like 2 weeks ago, and now I'm in the thick right now of rehearsals for a show that opens in a week and a half called Punk Rock Girl. I mentioned my friend Joe Iconis. He and I have been collaborators for a long time for things, and we wrote a song together for Monster Songs actually. But he brought me along because he said, you know, he was commissioned to write a musical based on a catalog of BMG songs. And he was, and I was like, you're a composer. You don't need to do a jukebox musical. He's like, yeah, but it's paycheck and this could be really fun kind of idea. And I was like, okay. So he invited me to be the co-arranger and the orchestrator. And and I think Joe didn't just say, oh, I'm going to do it for the money, but he did it because he, like me, is really interested in accessibility for young people and them feeling seen in art. And he thought, well, this show is the whole point of the show is to get licensed by Concord Theatricals, which they will. Yeah. And so he wanted to create a show that was written for all the folks that would never get the leads. For all the folks that would be the ensemble players. Yeah. They are going to be the leads in this show. They're just misfit, absolute weirdos. It's a wild show, and it's all songs to unify the thing, because we were given this gigantic catalog of songs, and the title Punk Rock Girl, he had just that. So he wrote this crazy story, and we decided to unify it by all using female fronted punk or rock songs from the past like 30 years. So some of my favorite artists, we snuck in a bunch of folks that we didn't think people knew, that we were lucky enough. So there's like stuff that there's people know, like Pink and Avril Lavigne and all Katy Perry and stuff like that. But then there's like Slater Kinney and Bikini Kill and Hole and like really, really fun bands that like I've loved forever. And now like a whole generation of kids is going to get to do, and then it'll be licensed and performed all over, which I'm so thrilled about. But it's been so much work. It was on hiatus. It was supposed to happen 2 years ago, then it got delayed, then we're trying to do it, and now it's happening in a week and a half. Wow. And I can't wait to hear the band. It's going to be killer. And our director is also named Jen. I only work with Jens. Our director and our music director and our costume designer are all named Jennifer. Oh, geez. But Jennifer Werner Carzano, she's a killer director. She's a director choreographer. She knows comic timing because she works on Book of Mormon. She sets Book of Mormon all over the world. She is a genius. So it's wild watching her work, and she'll have the weirdest, dumbest, most incredible idea. I say dumbest in the best way. Yeah. Just something that makes us all laugh and makes it come real. It's just wild. It's a really collaborative process. All of us are always like, what's that? What do we do? How do we make it funnier or wilder or whatever? And yeah, so that's what I'm working on now.
Awesome. Sounds like a fun show. And
it's really fun.
For the people who, like you said, not necessarily the traditional leads or face of the show, when that's totally got to go out the window, the traditional leads and look.
Well, things are changing to that degree, to the anti-heroes and kind of the idea of who can play. Yeah. What a lead has to look like, I think is starting to shift, for sure. But yeah, it's just fun. It's just funny and makes me laugh. It's a big dance show, which I've never really written dance arrangements for. And I've orchestrated, Monster Songs orchestrated, a co-orchestrated Lightning Thief, but this is really fun because I get a little bit bigger of a palette, and that's fun too. It's still rock, it's just like, what songs do we want to make really authentic to the sound of the originals, and what are we completely subverting people's expectations of, which is super fun.
I'm picturing a kick line to a whole song. Kind of want to see that, but
no.
Okay, I didn't think so.
I will say this. I mean, like, what I think drives me nuts is in a jukebox musical where they say it's a rock show and then it sounds watered down.
Yeah.
This will not be the case for this show. It is gonna rock, and it's gonna rock hard, and that makes me really excited.
You can't water down whole. It's either do it or don't.
Very true. Very true.
Rob, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us, and talking about how Lightning Thief was the experience for you, Monster Songs, which sounds really cool, and this the Cult show, and your newest show that you're working on. It's always exciting to learn about the past, present, and future.
Thanks.
So thank you so much.
Of course, I appreciate it so much. And if anybody's interested in listening to stuff, that new EP is on Spotify, and Sarah Beth Pfeiffer, who's my writing partner on it, she has got killer chops. Just gotta hear her wail, skrelt it out.
Nice.
Start your new year off right.
Now, before we go, Rob, I always ask 3 questions of my guests. There's no right or wrong answers, but we will get to know the deep, dark secrets of Rob, and a little bit better who you are. Okay, question 1. This is actually the easiest one. What creator or team within musical theater has had a great influence on you? It could be a composer, lyricist, director, producer, actor, even a stage manager. Could be somebody famous or not famous, like a teacher. Is there anybody who's had a great influence on you?
Yeah, lots of folks. But it's usually folks not in musical theater. I mean, obviously, like, this is you want a simple answer, it's gonna be hard for me, but like Sweeney Todd like changed my life. So that was a show that, I mean, I could say that, but Hedwig and the Angry Inch opened up a lot for me. So Stephen Trask's music, John Cameron Mitchell, that of what a musical could be and what a musical could sound like, that was one of my biggest influences, I would say.
Very cool. There's no right or wrong answer, so 1 point. That was the easy one. Question number 2. Which Greek god or classic monster do you connect with most?
Oh, no. Well, I like the god Apollo, and he was a twin with Artemis, so I think that makes sense, a twin sister. So I would say Apollo, I think, yeah.
All right, nice. No wrong answer again. So just a little bit more about you. We're getting to know the psyche of Rob. And number 3, the one that people might judge you on, this one. Food in the theater or cell phones in the theater? What is worse?
I think, cell phones in the theater. Yeah. Cell phones in the theater. However, I still think I'm not going to come down on those kids go with their GoPros. I mean, I want someone to do it professionally so they don't have to do that. That's what I want to have. But yeah, cell phones drive me nuts. Just like be present. Mm-hmm. But I like to snack, so I'm a snacker. I'm going to quietly sneak those M&Ms. I remember I saw Angels in America, right? That was right before the end of pandemic, and I was just like sneaking those M&Ms. It's 4 hours. It's like a marathon. And I got to sit. Oh my God! Can I name drop? I got to sit next to Frances McDormand for 4 hours watching Angels in America, and we just were snacking on those M&Ms. Secretly, I wouldn't have made it. So yeah, snacks in the theater is okay with me.
Okay, and yeah, that is Angels in America. Yeah, that's a long show. I saw Angels in America in the afternoon. Had a break, and then I saw Perestroika in the evening.
That's what I did. That's what I did.
Yes, so I totally.
But it flew by, though. Yes. I mean, it was unreal. I don't know how Andrew Garfield could talk after that.
I saw it in Toronto, but it's it's the same length, no matter where you do it. So.
But it's like, that's what I love, those kinds of shows, like those marathon shows that you're just like, I'm in it. If I'm committing to it, I'm committing to it. And it makes me, that's some of the best theater that I love. Just like, all right, we're good. We're doing it.
Yeah, I know. Let's hunker down, get your M&Ms out, and watch a show. I also would have accepted both are terrible, but I understand with Angels in America, so I will cut you half a point. more. So you got 1.5 points on that one, because that's a long show to sit through. So 3.5 points out of 3. Congratulations. I got no prizes, but you'll win. So Rob, thank you again so much for talking with us today. I look forward to hearing more about these other shows, Monster Song and the new one that you just finished, and the one that's coming out. And yeah, I look forward to seeing these shows on stage somewhere.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
No problem. We were just speaking with Rob Rokicki here on Musical Theater Radio. Tune in next week, as we'll be speaking with another guest or guests about their life, love, and passion. That is musical theater. I'm your host, as always, Jean-Paul Jovanoff. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.